Hey guy, polygamy, the practice of one man marrying multiple women, was once common in many societies and historical periods around the world. However, today polygamy has been abolished or prohibited in many countries, though it still persists in some places. But where did it originate? Listen to the entire story of its history to find out. If you enjoy it, please like, share and subscribe to the channel to hear many more fascinating stories. On the vast plains of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates have murmured side by side for millennia, early humans began to form the first communities. At that time, there were no marriage certificates, no lavish wedding ceremonies, and no one setting rules about who could marry whom or how many spouses one might have. Humans simply lived close to one another, bonded by instinct and by the needs of survival. The prehistoric era left few written records, but from archaeological sites, researchers know that marriage, even though it had no clear name yet, was present as a form of social commitment. A man shared a cave with a woman, and together they bore children, hunted, foraged, and survived the bitter winters and lurking wild beasts. At first, it was not romantic love. It was a collaboration between individuals with different skills to create an efficient living unit. In small tribes, it was not unusual for a man to have multiple partners. In fact, some primitive communities even maintained a form of group marriage, in which a group of men could be considered the husbands of the same woman, and vice versa. This arose not only from reproductive needs, but also from a social understanding. Children were the property of the community, not necessarily belonging to a single pair of parents. That sharing and sense of community was not born of ignorance or disorder, but of the demands of living circumstances. When each child needed many caregivers, and when a community had to remain united to withstand nature's forces, the notion of an individual owning a single life partner was not necessarily a priority. It was precisely in the Neolithic era, when humans began to cultivate crops and tame animals, that the notion of family gradually took clearer shape. A man no longer needed to wander everywhere in pursuit of game. They began to settle beside fields of wheat, beside flocks of gentle sheep, and from that point the concept of property emerged. When there was land and grain, people began to want to pass that property on to their own children, and that was when the rudimentary, monogamous marriage system first began to sprout. However, having only one wife and one husband was still not a universal standard. In many ancient civilizations, especially wealthy societies such as Egypt, ancient China, or the kingdoms of Mesopotamia, polygamy was common among the nobility. Kings and rulers could have dozens, even hundreds of concubines, not out of romantic love, but for political alliances, to demonstrate power, and from the desire to have many sons to carry on the lineage. Among the common people, however, most households had only one wife, simply because they lacked the resources to support more. In that context, marriage became part of the social structure, somewhat rigid, yet still shaped by the patterns of cooperative survival seen in earlier times. Many modern anthropologists argue that polygyny is not outdated, but rather a stage suited to specific historical circumstances. In places where the male mortality rate is high due to war or hunting, and women outnumber men, one man having multiple wives helps balance society. Conversely, in small communities with scarce resources, monogamy is the more reasonable choice. You may find it surprising, but in some ancient cultures, like the Mosuo in Tibet, they once maintained a matrilineal system. Women were the heads of their households, and they could have multiple partners, while children were raised by the extended family under the mother's authority. There was no binding husband-wife relationship there, only a wide network of connections based on bloodlines and communal responsibility. The ancient world never had a single model of marriage. Each civilization, each land and each stage of development had its own form of social organisation. From primitive, temporary alliances to formal wedding rituals, humans have always adapted the ways they live and love to suit the times. And if you lie down now, listening to the wind sigh through the curtains and closing your eyes to picture an ancient village on the steppe, where fires flicker in the night and laughter echoes from a tent of animal skins, you may realise that marriage in whatever form has always been part of humanity's journey of living together. Marriage in the first civilizations. When stepping out of the primeval expanse of the Mesopotamian plains, humans settled beside the Nile River of ancient Egypt, on the banks of the Indus in the Indian Valley, and along the Yellow River of China. In each place, under different skies, marriage customs began to be recorded in hieroglyphs, carved on stone stelae, and passed down orally through royal anecdotes. Egypt, the golden splendour of polygamy. In ancient Egypt, people venerated the goddess Ma'at, the symbol of harmony and justice. The pharaoh was not only the ruler, but also the intermediary between heaven and earth. Therefore, his having many queens and concubines served to demonstrate his supreme power, forging connections with multiple lands and lineages. Among them, the most famous queen was Nefertiti. She was not only beautiful, but also wielded great political influence. The palace women, in turn, were selected from noble families to build alliances. Thus, the royal wedding became a flawless ritual, the sacrifice of a black bull, offerings at the Karnak temple, and then the bier was wound with lotus flowers, symbols of purity and rebirth. But among the common people, marriage remained quite simple. A rose gold ring, a piece of linen embroidered with lotus flowers as the wedding gift, and then walking together to a thatched house by the riverbank, jointly tending a small plot of land and their herd of cattle. A husband might take a few secondary wives if he had the means to support them, but usually limited the number to avoid jealousy and management difficulties. Mesopotamia, the alliance by decree. Returning to the land that gave birth to civilization, city-states such as Babylon, and Assyria used marriage as a political tool. King Ur-Nammu established the Code of Ur-Nammu, which clearly defined the rights and duties of husband and wife, the inheritance of property, and the penalties for breaking the commitment. Many princesses were sent off to marry the kings of neighbouring states as a way to appease war and establish trade relations. At that time, marriage was almost entirely decided by the king and court officials, leaving very little room for personal emotion. Assyrian stone carvings even depict the scene of Princess Gilgamesh departing the city of Uruk, gazing off into the distance toward the foreign land to which she must entrust her complete faith. Indus Valley, the mystery of the Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro people. The Harappa-Mohenjo-Daro civilization, though still cloaked in mystery due to its undeciphered script, nonetheless left traces of family life in its uniformly planned streets. The adjoining houses with spacious courtyards reveal strong bonds between generations. Archaeologists have uncovered woolen dresses embroidered with patterns, gemstone necklaces, and hollow rattles, items that may have served as wedding gifts. By all accounts, marriages here were likely monogamous, since there is no evidence of elaborate concubine quarters or grand harems. However, the discovery of individuals under 13 years old in burial sites shows that weddings took place at a very early age, ensuring continuous reproduction and meeting the labour demands of ancient agriculture. Ancient China, from polygyny to Confucianism. In ancient China, during the Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties, polygamy flourished among the noble class. Officials had one principal wife, Qin that, several secondary wives, Fu Nian, and many concubines, Thiep that. The principal wife was often chosen with great care, bringing the customs of her native home to avoid cultural conflict. However, by the Spring and Autumn Warring States period, Confucius and the Confucian scholars began to teach about benevolence, loyalty, and familial harmony. In the Analects, Confucius repeatedly emphasized the importance of maternal love, marital accord, and the union of one husband and one wife being as inseparable as fish in water. Gradually, Confucian doctrine exerted a strong influence on marital concepts. The husband must show filial piety to his wife's parents, the wife must be obedient to her husband's parents, and the standard of 3 obediences and 4 virtues took shape. Before you close your eyes, imagine the quiet Qingming gardens beside a stone-paved lane where the betrothed stand in solemn garb, hand in hand, beside an ancestral altar glowing with candlelight. Their vows are not only for one another, but also directed toward their forebears, toward heaven and earth. Marriage from the perspective of religion and law. As the Roman Empire extended its tentacles across the Mediterranean, marriage law also became a tool of social control. Meanwhile, the Jewish, early Hindu, and early Islamic communities each established their own norms, based on their scriptures and religious canons, to preserve family order and communal harmony. Rome, from civil union to religious matrimony. Originally, Roman marriage, matrimonium, was a civil agreement between two families. The bride's father and the groom's father negotiated the dowry, dos, inheritance rights, and the bride's social status upon entering her husband's household. The ceremony could be simple, requiring only 2 witnesses to sign, or elaborate, following the connubium rite, with an altar to Juno, the goddess of marriage, and vows sworn before the gods. In the 1st and 2nd centuries CE, as Christianity began to spread throughout the empire, the Roman Church gradually incorporated religious ritual into marriage. At the altar, the priest would recite prayers, the bride would place a ring on her 4th finger, and the couple would kiss, a sign not only of affection, but of divine grace. However, polygamy remained prohibited for Roman citizens. A man was permitted only one lawful wife, although extramarital relationships, concubinatus, were still common among the upper classes. Judaism. Your husband is God's gift. In the Jewish tradition, marriage, kiddushin, is a sacred union of 2 souls, formalized by a handwritten scroll, ketubah. The ketubah specifies the husband's obligations to support his wife, the marriage gift, mon, and the rights in case of divorce. The wedding consists of 2 stages, irusin, betrothal, and nisuin, bringing the bride into the husband's home, until the groom gives the ring and the bride declares there is no marriage outside this document. She is not yet officially his wife. Polygamy did exist in the Bible. King Solomon was famed for having 700 wives and 300 concubines. 1 Kings chapter 11:3. But from the 1st century CE onward, Jewish legal authorities gradually restricted and ultimately forbade polygamy, promoting monogamy as the sole symbol of spiritual wholeness. Hinduism. 9 cycles of rebirth for one wedding. In the Vedas, marriage, vivaha, is regarded as one of the 4 purusharthas, life goals, alongside dharma, righteousness, artha, wealth, and moksha, liberation. The traditional wedding consists of 16 rites, sodasa samskara, from the parents' search for a suitable match, kanyadana, to the sacred fire, homagni, witnessing the couple taking 7 steps around the fire, saptapadi, each step representing a vow of fidelity, prosperity, health, offspring, and peace. Although Hinduism does not encourage polygyny, in historical royal dynasties and among the noble classes, kings could maintain multiple principal queens and concubines to uphold political alliances. It was only by the 10th century CE, when the sastric laws became more stringent, that monogamous marriage emerged as the norm for the vast majority of the population. Early Islam. 2 is enough, 3 is temporary, 4 is the limit. When Islam emerged on the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century, the Quran permitted a man to have up to 4 wives, provided he deals justly among them. Qur'an 4:3. This was a reform compared to earlier customs, when men could have dozens of wives and concubines. The scripture stipulates that a man may only take additional wives if he can support them and treat them equitably, in order to protect the rights of women and of orphans and widows in tribal Arab society. The marriage ceremony, nikah, is conducted in the presence of 2 witnesses and includes the bride's dower, ma'ashar, a gift, whether property, money, or other valuables, given by the groom to the bride. Afterwards, the walima, feast, announces the event to the community. Over time, as Islam spread into other civilizations such as Persia, the Indian subcontinent, and Anatolia, indigenous marriage customs gradually blended with the Quranic principles of fairness and the maximum of 4 wives. Once more, relax your body and imagine yourself sitting by a warm fire at night, feeling the breeze whisper through the thatched roofs. Each tale of Roman pageantry, each sacred vow in the Jewish temple, each Saptapadi step around the holy fire, and the Nika chants echoing across the desert, all reveal one truth. Marriage is not only the union of 2 people, but the thread that weaves together humanity's cultural tapestry. Marriage in medieval Europe, £500, 1000 CE. When the Western Roman Empire withered away, Europe entered the Middle Ages, a turbulent yet colourful era of stone castles, monastic movements, and knightly feudal contracts. In that context, marriage was not merely a personal affair, but a tool to strengthen alliances, preserve lands, and secure the throne for the next generation. Alliances through dowry and dower. Throughout the post-Roman kingdoms, from Clovis's Franks to the Visigoths on the Iberian Peninsula, the nobility's marriages were viewed as land transactions, in the form of dowries and dower. When a princess or noble lady entered her husband's household, her family bestowed upon the groom small estates, livestock, and a sum of money to cover their initial living expenses. In return, the groom's realm gained power, territory, and a fresh alliance. One might imagine a hushed ceremony beneath the stone vault of a cedarwood chapel, where doves fall silent, and only the jingle of iron clasps festooned with fresh flowers stirs the air around the bride's veil. The priest's consecratory hand-washing echoes in the gloom before he proclaims, "You shall be his wife, and he shall be your lord." Monasteries and church law intervene. From the 6th century onward, the Roman Church began to impose regulations. Marriages required the local bishop's consent, had to be celebrated in a church, and needed at least 2 witnesses. The goal was not only to sanctify the marital bond, but also to control lineage and prevent widespread consanguineous unions. The prohibition of affinity, up to the 7th degree, born of church law, forced many early alliances to seek dispensations from the Pope. Picture a young king, hands trembling in prayer within a grand cathedral, awaiting the papal bull that would allow him to wed a princess from a distant kin, a testament to the invisible power of the Holy See. War and betrothal, daughters as political postcards. War ravaged European lands, but also elevated political marriage. When a minor lord wished to extend his borders, he might offer his daughter's hand as a dowry to a neighbouring king in exchange for governance rights over frontier lands. A classic example is the Merovingian Lombard marriage. Hoping to end perpetual conflict, the 2 dynasties exchanged princesses to secure peace. In the procession through villages, banners fluttered, knights raised their standards, and incense smoke spiralled skyward. The bride, helmeted with plume-topped steel, stood silent, eyes closed, as vows of amity rippled through the evening breeze. Folk customs and peasants, not only the nobility but also common folk, observed simple rites. In spring, during the Lupercalia festival imported from Rome, girls under the moonlight would call out the name of the boy they fancied. Names written on slips of paper were dropped into a wooden casket, and at night, couples drew lots and danced together around a bonfire. Northern European peasants practiced brudarvisur. The groom entered the bride's chamber with a small shovel, tapping the wall with his hand to declare, "I come to dwell with you." The echoing taps sounded like the lullaby of the village itself outside the window. As you listened to the distant church bells and the clip-clop of horses on cobblestones, let your spirit drift back to medieval Europe, where marriage was not merely love, but a symphony of politics, religion, and folk tradition. Marriage from 1000 to 1300. Knights, vassals, and civil betrothals. After the Carolingian dynasty collapsed and the Merovingian line faded into history, Europe gradually stabilised under the new feudal order. From 1000 to 1300, marriage not only extended a family's influence, but also reflected the complex relationships among king, vassals, and the church, knights and the oath of fealty. In the 11th century, the knight became the central symbol of feudal power. When a young man was dubbed a knight, he underwent the knighting ceremony before his lord, receiving sword and shield and swearing an oath of loyalty. Yet with the lands and privileges granted came the need to cement family bonds through marriage. A young knight, after his dubbing, was often betrothed to a lord's daughter to strengthen a military alliance. In a stone castle on a hillside, by the golden candlelight of the great hall, he in gleaming armour knelt before his bride, offering a silver ring engraved with a deer tree motif, a symbol of courage. Flutes, drums, and women's voices in silk resounded, mingling with the wind through the window, echoing off the knight's saddle. Betrothal from the cradle, baptism, and child engagement. In many Anglo-French castles, betrothal could occur as soon as the maiden was born. After her baptism in the local church, vassals and her father solemnly presented a dowry, a small parcel of land, a warhorse, or a suit of armour. A priest or even a folk healer witnessed the promise, praying that the two children would one day preserve peace between their domains. Feudal civil law recognised this bond as binding. Neither party could retract without the lord's or the church's permission. Thus, even if the children grew apart, they were compelled to honour the covenant made in infancy. Municipal courts and the right of appeal. By the late 12th century, as civil weddings surged in newly prosperous Italian and southern German towns, city courts began handling marital disputes. Florence and Siena even established Fabbrica del Matrimonio, where couples could register their vows, authenticate documents, and, if necessary, have the court adjudicate disputes over the dower. With the rise of the Hanseatic League in Northern Europe, regulations relaxed. A merchant could marry by proxy if he traded abroad. Such weddings took place in the city council chamber, announced by public notice and sealed with a lapis lazuli stamp on the certificate. The church's role: prohibitions and dispensations. Canon law remained paramount but more flexible than before. The ban on consanguinity was revised. Whereas previously 7 degrees were forbidden, the Fourth Lateran Council, 1215, reduced this to 4 degrees. This eased royal families' search for suitable matches without lengthy dispensations. Simultaneously, the Church imposed harsh penalties on those violating civil betrothals. Both spouses could be barred from communion, denied the Eucharist, until they agreed to annul an unlawful union. Local customs blended into ritual. In Northern Europe, Scandinavians preserved midsummer festival rites. On the summer full moon, maidens wore wildflower crowns, while young men donned red sashes. They danced around bonfires, and when the final song ended, couples entered a temporary wedding. No priest present, but laughter and flute music warmed the night. On the Iberian Peninsula, after Islam's retreat and the spread of Catholic marriage, echoes of the muwaqat custom, engagement under the palm, persisted. Bride and groom would plant a young palm tree before the house, symbolising growth and endurance. Before you fall asleep, let your spirit journey to the grand castles and bustling port towns, where infant betrothals, busy civil courts and church bells echo through the woods. Each ritual, each local nuance, each law, all reflect one truth. Marriage is the mirror of history, culture, and power in its age. Marriage in the Renaissance era, 1300 to 1500. Love, power, and splendour. As Europe entered the Renaissance, the world awakened from its dark ages, and the flame of knowledge and art burst forth across the cities of Florence, Venice, and Rome. Alongside this, the concept of marriage also changed. Personal love began to have a voice, yet there was no lack of the opulence of power and social status. The triumph of romantic love. Thanks to the poetry of Petrarch and chivalric novels like La Celestina, the concept of amor cortese, refined courtly love, spread throughout Italy and Western Europe. Young men wrote sonnets to confess their hearts, offered silk gowns and embroidered gloves in gold thread to their ladies. Ballrooms beneath frescoed domes with candlelight shimmering on tiled pools provided the ideal setting for whispered sweet nothings. Yet engagements were still often arranged by parents, especially among the nobility. But now, alongside the dowry and alliance, appeared the gift of love, dot d'amore, treasure troves of jewellery, embroidered letters, and painted portraits of the bride. This was how couples demonstrated their affection to their families and quietly affirmed their commitment. Lavish weddings and the archway ritual. Wealthy dynasties, the Medicis in Florence, the Sforzas in Milan, or the Trastamaras in Spain, competed to host the grandest weddings. Ensembles of flutes, viols, and horsebells, banquet tables draped in gold-embroidered brocade, lined with almond and Pulian honey sweets, dancers in costumes inspired by Greek mythology, performing the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. The archway ritual, arco nuziale, became emblematic. A vaulted frame decorated with themes honouring Venus, the goddess of love, erected at the castle entrance. As groom and bride passed beneath, family members on either side scattered white and crimson rose petals, sending blessings as if from a fairy tale realm. Royal power and political marriage. Though romantic love reigned, court politics still prioritised national interest. The marriage of Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon, 1469, is a prime example. Though the young couple cherished one another, first and foremost they united thousands of soldiers, hundreds of merchant ships, and a single Spanish monarchy. In England, Henry VIII's marriage to his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, was not only a royal alliance, but also the key by which King Henry sought independence for the Church of England from Rome. Over generations, the bloodlines of the Tudors and Habsburgs were bound tightly through a series of childhood arranged marriages, folk rituals, and bridal fairs. In the countryside, though lacking royal scale, Renaissance weddings had their own charm. Autumn bridal fairs were held. Villagers erected brightly decorated stalls selling wedding gifts, flowered hats, veils, paper fans, and performed traditional Morris ceremonies. Dances. The bridal procession wound through golden wheat fields, triangle drums and shawms echoing across the rolling hills, heralding a prosperous new beginning. As the winter wind sweeps past your window, let the Renaissance scene, with its courtly love, lavish weddings, and political design, pass before your mind like a vivid painting. Marriage was not merely ceremony, but a mirror reflecting the era's aspirations, power, and beauty. Polygamy. In the 17th century, men holding dozens of alliances at once. While Europe underwent the Protestant Reformation, bloody religious wars, and the rise of the bourgeoisie, many regions in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East still maintained polygamy as part of imperial power, religious status, or tribal tradition. In this chapter, we will take a closer look at the men reputed to have had the largest numbers of wives between 1600 and 1700, and the social and political significance behind each marriage. Islamic empires, sultans, and their vast harem. Ottoman, the Topkapi palace harem. The Ottoman Empire, pillar of Islamic power from the 14th to the 20th century, maintained a magnificent harem at Topkapi Palace, Istanbul. Although the Quran legally limited a man to 4 official wives, the sultans typically supported hundreds of concubines and attendants, collectively called the harem. Sultan Ahmed Vij, 1590–1617. Court records list at least 14 official wives, Khazar, and 30 to 40 concubines. Sultan Mehmed IV, 1642–1693. Chronicles note he regularly visited the harem and had around 20–25 principal wives and 60–70 unnamed concubines whose primary role was childbearing. Each marriage to a noble wife came with hidden political power. The wife's family received land grants, high titles, and economic privileges. The Quranic principle of equal treatment among wives was more theoretical than practical. In reality, each wife had her own living quarters and support network. Mughals, the Agra and Delhi palaces. In India, the Mughal dynasty was also famed for its opulent harem. Under Shah Jahan, 1592–66, builder of the Taj Mahal, in honour of his wife Mumtaz Mahal, he officially had 7 principal wives, but including concubines and attendants, the number rose to 30-40. Jahangir, 1569–1627, father of Shah Jahan, said to have had 18 official wives and about 50 concubines to secure both religious and tribal alliances. Aurangzeb, 1618–1707, successor to Shah Jahan, recorded as having 14 principal wives and over 30 concubines, though he enforced Quranic stipulations more strictly than his predecessors. In the Mughal court, marriage served both religious purposes, protecting the Sunni line, and regional alliances, marrying Indian princesses to Rajput chiefs, strengthening the empire's border security. Africa, kings and extended families. In many African kingdoms, polygamy was not only a sign of personal power, but also a means of extending influence among different ethnic groups. Kingdom of Congo, King Manuel I, 1461–1521, reputedly had over 20 official wives and numerous concubines, a tradition continued by 17th century rulers who married off daughters to various tribal chiefs, creating durable alliances. Ashanti Empire. In West Africa, modern Ghana, each Asantehene, Ashanti king, typically had 20–30 wives. These marriages laid the foundation for political stability and ensured manpower for the court. Each queen from another tribe was responsible for travelling, collecting taxes, and maintaining peace in her home region. Indigenous Americas, tribal alliances. Several Native American and South American tribal leaders practiced polygamy to bind small communities into larger confederations. For example, some Great Lakes chiefs had 5–7 wives, each representing a different tribe. Each marriage was an inviolable pledge between nations, a form of long-term diplomacy without written treaties. Social and religious significance. A man's status. Polygamy often equaled prestige. The more wives a man had, the more it demonstrated his financial capacity, protective power, and community respect. In many societies, a man's right to inherit land and wealth from vassals or tribes increased proportionally with his ability to support a diverse family. A wife's role. Within a polygamous system, each wife held a different rank: chief queen, consort, then concubines. Each rank had its own quarters in the palace, responsibilities for producing male heirs, and separate funeral rites. Religious conceptions. Some religions, like Islam, permitted polygamy under the condition of justice, Kilos 4:3, though not all Islamic countries strictly adhered to it. Conversely, in African or Central Asian tribes, polygamy was tied to ancestral beliefs. Marriages connected the living world with the ancestral spirit realm, creating an extensive spiritual network. Consequences and turning points. By the late 17th century, many Western social reformers and missionaries began criticizing polygamy as a source of gender injustice, jealousy, and rivalry within the harem. New laws in many African and Asian colonies, enacted by British and French colonial authorities, gradually outlawed polygamy, replacing it with monogamous marriage under Western law. Yet even when legally banned, remnants of polygamy persisted as unofficial unions, or secondary wives, in many societies well into the 20th century. Let yourself be carried by the flute's melody, drifting through Topkapa's windows, the drums of Agra's ceremonies, and the song echoes at the Ashanti fair. Each story, each polygamous marriage, is a vivid piece of humanity's historical mosaic, where power and affection intertwine, and the number of wives signifies not just quantity, but the very symbol of imperial life and authority. Morning sunlight streamed through the white-painted wooden window frame, casting flickering patches of light across the tabletop and the sheets of correspondence. The 18th century rang with the grinding roar of cannon mortars and the steam rising from the first engines. Yet for marriage it was also an age of enlightenment, when ideas of personal liberty, equality, and romantic love began to speak with great force. In the newly rising towns, intellectuals gathered in cosy salons, raising cups of rose-infused tea and debating Rousseau under the glow of candlelight, pacing as they argued that man is born free and equal. This declaration became a refrain in the heart of every young woman dreaming of a marriage that was not merely an economic transaction or a political plot, but a choice of the heart. In the stately chateau of France, before the revolution broke out, noble families still bound their children in weddings scripted centuries earlier. Yet even there, as the sentimental novel Emile circulated through grand libraries, parents began to heed their children's true longings. A young gentleman from Lorraine might linger in the library, hiding a sworn letter beneath the pages of his prayer book, then blushing as he handed it to his beloved. When the revolutionary tide swept away the thrones of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, marriage became the symbol of a new society. Liberty, equality, fraternity was no longer merely a political slogan, but a pledge that every individual could choose their own partner. The first legal documents issued after the French Revolution declared that all citizens had the right to free marriage, and that marriage must rest upon the mutual consent of both parties. Crossing to England, where factories and canals thundered day and night, urban workers would gather after their shifts in taverns to share legends of the industrial women, the weavers and miners with strong characters who earned their own living. They and the carpenters, the coachwrights, voiced their desire for spouses who would share both labour and affection, no longer willing to be sold off at a parent's decree. Industrial progress gave rise to a new bourgeoisie, with terraced housing and cultural clubs. At lavish ballroom evenings, violins played the Lass of Richmond Hill, as young couples, small against tapestries of silk and brocade, exchanged hushed, yearning words. Love was no longer a luxury reserved for the nobility, but was celebrated as a sacred force, the very foundation of the modern family. In the American colonies, amid vast plantations and untamed land along the Mississippi, legal frameworks began to take shape. Local laws stipulated that once two people agreed to wed, their contract became inviolable, even if the bride was a poor farmer's daughter and the groom merely a sawmiller. They carved each other's names on wooden beams and exchanged a silver plate in lieu of a hausharmofo, dowry, as proof of their equal love. Marriage novels lined the bookshelves. Jane Austen portrayed proud Elizabeth Bennet, loving with both reason and heart. Charlotte Bronte penned the self-respecting Jane Eyre, who would not accept life as an anonymous daughter-in-law, even when promised to a wealthy suitor. These voices shook societal conventions. Marriage was a two-way covenant in which both partners had their rights protected and their affections honoured. In this same period, the Napoleonic Code was born, standardising marriage and family law across continental Europe. Statutes clearly defined parental responsibilities, the sharing of assets, and even permitted divorce, once a taboo. Divorce became a judicial separation that was both painful and liberating, and a testament to the legal autonomy of both wife and husband. And as the fires in the steam engines gradually dimmed and smoke drifted lazily through the homestead, one could hear the hearts of millions in the 18th century longing to be loved, to choose their life partner, and to live in a marriage not confined by ancient rituals. From feudal castles to noisy industrial streets, a revolution in marital ideals paved the way for an age in which monogamy, founded on love and equality, became the standard of the new era. Morning mist drifted through the old streets of London, Paris, and New York, heralding a new era. The 19th century witnessed the explosion of industrialization and urbanization, and at the same time a profound transformation in the notions of family and marriage. From the aristocracy to the slums surrounding the factories, monogamy gradually became the sole model, endorsed and strictly protected by both law and social morality. In industrial cities, the ideal home was depicted in paintings and newspapers. The father as the breadwinner, the mother caring for the children, in a warm house, preparing the evening meal and laundering clothes. Any sign of an extramarital relationship, even a secondary wife or a secret lover, was swiftly condemned as a crime-threatening social order. In England, the moral education movement launched by Protestant missionaries created campaigns against the evil of mistresses among the upper classes. Broadside newspapers printed satirical illustrations of men with dubious mistresses. Courts supported lawful wives in suing their husbands for property rights and child custody. The Matrimonial Causes Act, 1857, expanded the right to divorce, allowing both wife and husband to petition on grounds of adultery or cruelty, paving the way for women to step out of the shadows of the old polygamous system. On the European continent, Napoleon's wave of reform was followed by even more modern civil codes, standardising civil marriage, stipulating that every marriage contract must rest on the principle of equality in rights and duties. All forms of indigenous polygyny in African and Asian colonies under colonial rule were gradually abolished or restricted by decree. Locals were forced to convert to Western marriage or risk losing inheritance rights to their land. Alongside legal change, the early 19th century women's rights movement demanded women's access to education and economic autonomy. Pioneers like Mary Wollstonecraft, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Emmeline Pankhurst continually asked, why must a woman accept monogamy when polygamy was once accepted? They argued that whether there were many wives or one, if women lacked equal rights, marriage remained an unjust bond. In romantic literature, female characters became more assertive than ever. A young woman in Manchester might refuse an arranged aristocratic match to seek true love. A Parisian lady would not hesitate to pen a letter rejecting a noble suitor, even if that meant earning her own living. These stories proliferated in women's magazines, kindling hope for marriages based on love and mutual respect. On America's East Coast, as locomotives thundered through golden cornfields, immigrant communities from Europe, Asia, and Latin America brought regional customs, many still permitting polygyny in tribal life. But one by one, states enacted residency laws forcing all citizens to register only monogamous marriages. Violations were punished by fines or criminal charges. Despite these strictures, polygamous relationships persisted covertly as housemaids or anonymous lovers, especially among the wealthy elite. Yet public opinion grew ever more condemning, making such liaisons no longer conceivable in the open. As the day drew to a close, gaslights glittered in the window panes and church bells rang down from the hilltops. Let your spirit relax amid these transformations. From the splendour of Topkapi Palace to the grandeur of Agra's court and onto Victorian London streets, each testifying to history's arc, polygamy, once powerful, gradually gave way to monogamy, built on equality, affection, and modern law. And so, when night falls, the story of marriage has turned a new page, opening an era of sincere love and mutual commitment, ready for its next chapter. A journey across the modern world, where marriage continues to evolve with the heartbeat of humanity. Entering the 20th century, from the women's rights movement to global marriage reforms, as the dawn of the 20th century broke, the world reeled from waves of political revolutions, industrialization, and 2 world wars that claimed millions of lives. Amid these upheavals, conceptions of marriage, already shaped by countless vicissitudes, again found themselves weighed against history, law, and society. By the early 1900s in Europe and North America, women not only secured the vote, but also demanded freedom in marriage. In England, after the act banning polygamy was passed, women focused on rights of divorce, joint property ownership, and child custody. The first female doctors and lawyers opened private marriage counselling practices where both wife and husband could meet to negotiate reconciliation or arrange an amicable separation. Under the glow of gaslight in meeting rooms, they read proclamations on marital duties alongside individual rights, testifying to a new order, Marriage was no longer solely a matter of religion or tribe, but a legal concern of every citizen. In the United States, the National American Woman Suffrage Association, NAWSA, vigorously lobbied for equal rights amendments to ensure judges could not favour husband or wife when dividing assets or awarding custody. At the same time, Mormon communities in Utah, with 19th century polygamous traditions, were criticised by the federal government and forced to abandon polygamy in 1890, gradually adhering to monogamous law to achieve territorial or statehood status. Court records preserve heartfelt letters protesting, "Why can Ottoman Muslims or Mughals be polygamous, but we cannot?" Voices echoing through generations from small desert church windows in Utah. Across Eurasia, after the Soviet Union's founding in 1922, radical social reforms were enacted. The Bolsheviks passed laws permitting divorce without proof of fault, encouraged voluntary marriage, and recognised family cooperatives without strict religious ceremony. Yet only decades later, under Stalin, policies reversed. Marriage was deemed a pillar of social stability. Divorce was heavily restricted, and the traditional one-husband, one-wife family was promoted. In many Islamic countries, amid rising nationalism and modernisation pressures, marriage reforms proceeded unevenly. Turkey under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, 1924, completely banned polygamy, placing marriage and family under secular state control. In contrast, Iran, after the 1979 revolution, tightened Quranic regulations, reaffirming a husband's right to up to 4 wives, subject to the first wife's consent and Islamic court approval. Debates surged. Where does religious tradition end and personal rights begin? In Africa, following independence waves of the 1950s, 1960s, newly formed nations enacted unified civil codes, requiring all citizens to register monogamous marriages to access public services and inherit state property. In Ghana, Nigeria, and Kenya, polygamy remained theoretically permissible under customary law, but civil courts prioritised recognising monogamous civil unions, sidelining secondary wives. Simultaneously worldwide, the rise of common law marriage posed new legal challenges. Same-sex couples, groups practicing collective marriage, or negotiated relationships all demanded rights to taxation, inheritance, and healthcare. From San Francisco to Amsterdam, from Berlin to Buenos Aires, rainbow flag marches chanted marriage equality, reminding us that the concept of one husband, one wife continues to expand beyond traditional bounds. As night falls over neon-lit megacities, think of the solemn portraits of couples circa 1910, the votes for women banners fluttering outside courtroom windows, and the earnest lawyers arguing for divorce without cause. All these are the opening notes of the 20th century's marriage symphony, where freedom, equality, and true love advance together into a new chapter. After the echoes of wartime guns and the mid-century political tremors, the world entered a peace hard won by millions of lives. But for marriage, peace did not mean stillness. From the 1950s to today, the concept of family and loving relationships has expanded, diversified, and grown freer than ever. When the post-war youth returned from the front, they built new homes on old concrete foundations. Private automobiles became courting vehicles. Alarm clocks woke each model family breakfast. And the TV show Father Knows Best implanted in viewers the ideal of the breadwinner father and the capable homemaker wife. Yet even in that template, seeds of change were sown. Female college students won scholarships, women factory workers joined the industrial workforce, and the thirst for independence grew. The 1960s, 1970s saw the women's liberation movement erupt across North America, Europe, and Australia. From the Women's Liberation Manifestos echoing along Chicago's boulevards to hand-in-hand marches through London, women demanded bodily autonomy, access to work, and above all the right to leave unhappy relationships. California first adopted no-fault divorce in 1969, and the reform quickly spread across the US and then many European countries. This legal revolution established fairness. No one needed to prove adultery or abuse to be freed, only to acknowledge that love had faded. Throughout continental Europe, from progressive Sweden to traditional Italy, divorce rates soared. Television talk shows opened their doors to strangers' private stories. Newspapers ran Ask the Marriage Expert columns, and counselling centres became havens for couples in crisis. Yet amid that crisis, the idea of marriage partnership emerged. Two people choosing to live together without registration, sharing child-rearing and finances while retaining personal freedom. At the same time, commercial air routes and global telecommunications created new meeting opportunities. Cross-border marriages boomed as citizens of different nations wed for economic reasons, migration, or simply because of cultural attraction. This posed legal challenges, recognizing foreign documents, adjusting immigration rights, and crafting policies to protect spouses from abroad. By the late 20th century, the LGBT movement rose powerfully. From the Stonewall Inn Uprising, 1969, to Love is Love, rainbow flag campaigns demanding same-sex marriage, sexual minorities found their voice. In 2001, the Netherlands became the first country to legalise same-sex marriage, paving the way for over 30 others. Wedding ceremonies featuring rainbow crowns, LGBT groomsmen and bridesmaids, and speeches on the right to free love became commonplace, showing that one husband, one wife, no longer conformed to a strictly male-female frame. Entering the 21st century, the internet and smartphones exploded, transforming how we connect. Dating apps like Tinder, Bumble, and OkCupid turned love into right swipe or left swipe decisions, blurring lines between short-term flings and lifelong commitment. Some sociologists call this the era of endless choice. You can chat with dozens at once, weighing partners like products before choosing one to bind yourself to. Meanwhile, the movement for relationship freedom, polyamory, gained recognition. Groups living together, sharing affection with multiple partners, formed love cooperatives, negotiated openly and respecting privacy. Books like The Ethical Slut and More Than Two argue that love isn't a scarce commodity, but can be fairly distributed among many if all consent. Also in this century, the idea of green marriage emerged. Couples pledging sustainable living, reduced consumption, and environmentally conscious child-rearing. They host zero-waste weddings, exchange recycled rings, and plan households powered by solar energy. This proves that marriage is not only an agreement between two people, but also a commitment to the planet. Looking back across the entire journey, from the grand polygamy of emperors to the Victorian family supper, from the Quran's allowance of 4 wives to no-fault civil divorce, from sonneted love beneath Renaissance lamps to swiping screens for romance, marriage has always transformed with each step of history, with every pulse of society and the human heart. City lights flicker through the thin morning mist, reflecting on the wet pavement after a rain shower. The 21st century still glows with technological advances, yet it is full of contradictions. On one hand, unprecedented global connectivity. On the other, generation-defining divides in how we understand love and marriage. In Asian metropolises, where ancient traditions still echo alongside glass skyscrapers, many young families continue wedding rituals handed down by their grandparents to honour their ancestors. They wear red ao dye, carry betel and areca nuts, and process past the ancestral altar, while their modern feast is piled with sushi, sashimi, and mini burgers. There, a husband and wife are expected both to care for grandparents and to raise children into responsible adults, while balancing career and personal happiness. In Europe and America, the notion of marriage for life is expanding into partnership for life, with couples signing detailed civil contracts that specify joint assets, child custody rights in case of separation, and commitments to care for one another in old age. Peers used to detailed employment contracts and health insurance, now want their marriage agreements to be just as transparent and fair. The trend of the marriage retreat, a vow renewal in nature, has become a new cultural norm. During prolonged social distancing and the pandemic, many couples retreated to resorts in the wild, attended communication workshops, rediscovered the language of love, and co-wrote commitment charters to reboot their relationship. Notes, handwritten letters, and even small paintings they exchange are kept as proof of a love that endures challenges. On the legal front, countries continue to refine frameworks to embrace every family form. As several European nations enact plural marriage laws, allowing 3 or 4 people to register as one family, debates over legitimacy and property rights once again rock parliamentary halls. Blockchain is being trialled to store digital marriage certificates that cannot be forged, and AI is being deployed for premarital counselling, predicting likely conflicts from psychological data. In virtual space, the metaverse has become a stage for romance. Avatars meet in parallel worlds, exchange digital rings, and hold weddings in surreal landscapes, emerald forests or eternal ice palaces. Virtual marriage is not yet legally recognised in many countries, but its devotees believe that true love need not be confined to physical dwellings. In the remote Amazon, indigenous tribes nurture wedding traditions through ritual pipe playing, face painting with natural pigments, and dances around bonfires. Cultural preservationists who record these ceremonies affirm, however the world changes, the human yearning for connection, collective or personal, remains immutable. Ultimately, whatever form marriage takes, a traditional couple, 2, individuals signing a civil contract, 3 people cohabiting legally, or 2 avatars pledging in the metaverse, the core desire is to share, to care, and to be cherished. As digital contracts, enduring commitments, and ancient rituals blend together, they paint a vibrant, multifaceted portrait of marriage in the new century. Not merely rules, but a space for love to be creative and ever-evolving. Marriage at the crossroads in the era of globalization. As the world stepped into the late 1990s and early 21st century, it seemed to shrink to a single mouse click. Commercial flights linked continents, the internet connected hearts across oceans, and modern life brought ancient marriage customs into collision with new global trends. In Dakar, Senegal's capital, a young bride in vibrant batik fabric still bows to her ancestors, laying palm fronds at her feet, but a live-stream screen allows her relatives in Paris to witness the ceremony. Her mother, once married in an arranged union between tribes, now guides her daughter in choosing a Western-style ring, setting matching wristwatches, and curating an R&B playlist, testaments to the harmony of past and present. In Shanghai, within a riverside compound by the Huangpu, bride and groom swap traditional ao dai for a white wedding gown and a modern suit. Yet they preserve the tea-touch ritual. They invite both sets of parents on stage. She pours tea, he raises the cup, and together they bow to give thanks to their ancestors. Afterwards, the feast blends dim sum, sashimi, and European-style cake, perhaps with a Spanish chef cooking paella at the low banquet table. Amid the Dubai desert, 2 international entrepreneurs hold their nikah atop a skyscraper beneath a Swarovski crystal canopy. The European bride wears an ivory abaya and a diamond-jewelled veil. The Arab groom presents the mahar, a Rolex watch. The reception features a Brazilian DJ, spinning electronic beats interwoven with plaintive oud melodies, creating a borderless cultural symphony. In Rio de Janeiro, Carnival's vibrant heart, Afro-Brazilian couples still celebrate candomblé weddings, lighting white candles before orixá statues, donning hand-embroidered robes, then parading along samba-filled boulevards. They exchange wooden rings carved from sacred trees and strung with rainbow beads, affirming that love transcends all ethnic and religious boundaries. In America's Silicon Valley, high-tech couples draft smart prenups on the blockchain. They define data sharing between 2 cloud accounts, program the division of startup equity in the event of divorce, and automate post-split support payments. Religious blessings appear only as a brief amen in the email invitation. Meanwhile, in Europe, the Netherlands allows registration of marital and cooperative relationships for same-sex and multi-partner unions, while Germany issues cultural reunion certificates to help mixed heritage families resolve land disputes and custody issues. These legal documents are drafted bilingually in the native tongue and English as a symbol of the globalization era. Yet in the quiet corners of every town, as night falls, many young people still return to their roots. They wear hanbok with a Vietnamese conical hat, perform the Bai Dung ritual in a church or ancient temple, offering betel, fermented rice wine, and sweet wedding cakes. They recite vows in Korean poetry, while the temple trumpet echoes Bak Nin Kwan Ho folk melodies, proof that no matter how the world changes, the national soul endures in romantic love. Amid this colourful global tableau, marriage is no longer just a story of two individuals or two families, but an ever-evolving tapestry of culture. Each wedding is a symphony where ancient and modern rhythms intersect, painting a portrait of humanity in an age of boundless connection. In the ever-flowing tide of 21st century migration, multinational families are on the rise, each member carrying 2 or 3 different bloodlines and languages. On New York's docks, immigrant families from Asia, Europe, and Latin America gather in little neighbourhoods to hold joint wedding ceremonies, to save on hall rental costs, and to strengthen community bonds. They decorate the archway with Chinese lanterns, Persian carpets, and Latin American-style wooden chairs and tables, witnessing an Indian bride in a sari lifting a cup of Japanese sake, and an Italian-suited groom toasting with Mexican tequila. In Melbourne, same-sex couples solemnly register their marriages at City Hall, once reserved only for Christian weddings. They invite both families, Turkish, Italian, and Vietnamese immigrants, to dance capoeira, flamenco, and Vietnamese folk dances together. The African djembe drums blend with the European accordion, testifying to love without borders. In India, alongside lavish Bollywood weddings, many young families embrace minimalism. They hold a green wedding, with fresh leaf garlands, recycled fabric rugs, and rings forged from reclaimed metal. Traditional Bollywood dance numbers remain, but guests sit on wooden floors under solar-powered lights, and all the food is vegetarian, honouring both tradition and environmental stewardship. In Tokyo, Gen Z couples can opt for a digital wedding in the VR chat metaverse. They design neon kimono avatars, hold the ceremony at a cyberpunk shrine, and guests from around the globe attend via VR headsets. Afterwards, they exchange NFTs as keepsakes, defining a new form of digital marriage, where network signals and blockchain serve as marriage law. In modern Africa, in Nairobi or Lagos, young entrepreneurs throw fusion weddings blending Maasai rituals with Western culture. They wear Maasai shukas in red, don European-style hats, and use a traditional wooden throne to exchange rings. The sound of traditional Risala lullabies merges with European EDM, erasing all boundaries between past and present. Within Sao Paulo's LGBTQ+ community, the polyamory circle wedding is gaining informal recognition. 3, 4, or even 5 people standing beneath a wreath, pledging fairness, honesty, and respect. Here there is no principal wife or concubine, but a consensual collective that nurtures and cares for one household together. Medical and inheritance rights are negotiated in a civil contract, opening the door to fresh family forms. And no matter how marriage's formula evolves, the foundations of love, respect, and sharing remain unchanged. Each wedding, whether in the desert or in the metaverse, in Europe or Africa, in a modern city or an ancient village, is the story of 2 or more people choosing to bind their lives together across the test of time. When the final night lights dim, let your heart recall this colourful journey from ancient cave marriages through grand palaces to contracts of thousands of digits in the digital realm. For marriage, in any form, is the yearning for harmony and sharing, a journey humanity will continue writing across every space and era. When the horizon of the future reveals distant rays of light, marriage opens onto unexpected crossroads. Humanity is approaching the boundary between biology and technology, between natural emotion and engineered relationships. In this chapter, we will look at the groundbreaking marriage trends of tomorrow, where AI weds, robots become companions, and multi-generation families live under one roof, together painting the portrait of 21st century marriage. In artificial intelligence laboratories, engineers and psychologists have created digital life partners capable of conversation, learning, and empathy almost like a human. Advanced chatbots using deep learning technology remember preferences, sense moods, and even adjust voice, facial expressions, and virtual gestures through VR headsets. In Japan and South Korea, where populations are aging rapidly, many choose to marry AI avatars, relationships without pressure to bear children, no visa requirements, and with emotional profiles customizable to one's liking. Their names become tech IDs. Anniversaries are coded commands. Yet the feelings are real, sharing worries, enjoying entertainment together, and offering emotional support in loneliness. At the same time, social robots are increasingly present in the modern household. No longer mere cleaning machines, they are designed to accompany us emotionally. With friendly frames, LED screen faces displaying emotions, and body language that mimics human behavior, these robots can hug, caress, and offer psychological advice. In many high-rise apartments in Shanghai's Pudong district, you might find a robot husband brewing coffee when his wife wakes early, or a robot wife stretching out for yoga, encouraging her human partner to stay healthy. They are programmed to honor every marital agreement, from keeping family secrets to coordinating daily schedules. However, not everyone accepts this trend. Philosophers and ethicists continuously debate. Can love remain love when one party is not a biological being? At international conferences, major religions declare that marriage between humans and machines cannot replace bonds born of nature and communal consciousness. Yet technological society presses on. Many startups now announce hybrid marriage models, pairing real spouses with AI aids to fill gaps in communication, elderly care, and household management. From another angle, the multi-generation household, where grandparents, parents, and children share one home, is becoming popular again. Once common in traditional East Asian culture to care for elders and raise children, the 21st century enriches this model. Smart homes install automated systems that adjust temperature and lighting and remind grandparents to take medication. Shared spaces integrate workrooms and play areas for children. Electronic kitchens suggest healthy menus for every family member. Through a touchscreen in the living room, each generation can video call distant relatives or summon a virtual assistant to help with medical or legal matters. This human-technology fusion lets extended families retain close traditions while enjoying modern conveniences. Not limited to 3 generations, small communities are forming extended family co-ops. These groups of 4 to 6 people, often long-time friends or polyamorous partners, pool funds to buy homes, live together, and share responsibilities for child-rearing, living expenses, even joint bank accounts and digital assets. Family contracts drafted on blockchain define rights, duties, and dispute resolution mechanisms. This model is spreading across costly real estate markets in the US, Europe, and Australia, where housing is expensive but social connection remains vital. Alongside this, the concept of flexible marriage has emerged as a response to the age of endless choice. In this model, 2 people commit to live together under a renewable agreement. Annually or biannually, they reassess the relationship, from emotional health and personal goals to family plans, before choosing to extend or conclude their union. These contracts include flexible clauses such as personal sabbaticals, dating allowances, and personal growth funds. They meet the needs of a generation that values freedom and self-development. Finally, in the context of climate change and resource scarcity, eco-marriage has appeared. Couples pledge to live with low consumption, practice rigorous recycling, and raise children sustainably. They exchange rings made from recycled metals and sign commitments to save water, reduce emissions, and protect the environment. International bodies like the United Nations encourage this form as part of global sustainable development goals. And as the pace of the 21st century overflows with technology and new bonds, one thing remains constant. Marriage, regardless of its form, always reflects the human aspiration for connection, sharing, and companionship on life's journey. In the future, we may witness weddings with AI brides, robot grooms, human-machine hybrid families, and marriage contracts as complex as software. But the spirit of marriage, the search for harmony, love, and shared responsibility will forever dwell in each of our hearts. When life's pace slows down, delayed marriage, child-free families, and the redefinition of home by the pale glow of yellow apartment lights, 21st century young people often keep a lengthy pause before deciding to marry. They spend time accumulating experience, pursuing passions, nurturing careers, and maintaining rich social lives without rushing into a lifelong commitment. Instead of walking down the aisle in their late 20s, many choose to cohabit as a trial phase. They share rent, split living expenses, shop together, and cook dinner under the warm glow of the kitchen light. The house is no longer a future family, but the present home, where two individuals grow freely, perhaps marrying after a few years, or deciding to part ways and follow separate paths. Some couples view marriage as a long-term service contract. They compare legal benefits, health insurance plans, tax perks, and parental leave policies, then weigh whether to formally register. For them, the 50% divorce rate is not so much a warning as proof that if you're not truly ready, don't sign. At the same time, the child-free by choice trend is spreading. On online forums, people share the joys of freedom, time for themselves, and the ability to invest and travel, without midnight feedings or tuition bills. They hold angel weddings, attended only by friends, with no children present, minimalist themes, and gifts donated to environmental or public health causes. In many Western cities, women are marrying at the latest ages in history, on average at 30-35 years old, with men marrying slightly later. Sociologists call this the postponement age, when investments in education and career top the priority list. The homes they choose tend to be compact, fitted with smart conveniences, and flexibly designed, convertible into a home office in just a few adjustments. Family spaces are changing too. The single household has become a new trend. Solo dwellers meticulously curate every corner, growing houseplants, arranging bookshelves, cooking healthy meals, and occasionally hosting friends or relatives. Though alone, they are not lonely. They connect through hobby groups, yoga classes, book clubs, and communal dating events, building diverse social networks rather than a traditional nuclear family. Amid these shifts, the concept of the open family has emerged. Two people who do not live together yet maintain a committed bond. They sign agreements to share part of their savings accounts, joint health insurance, and a rotating schedule of pet care. For them, a wedding might be a small ceremony or a public promise on social media, not necessarily a government-issued certificate. In the context of an ageing population, many European countries have promoted comprehensive marriage, a model combining multiple generations with single young adults or child-free couples. Multi-generational apartment complexes are designed with inpatient clinics, daycare centres, community rooms and shared kitchens, where all members voluntarily contribute to meal preparation and mutual care. Bonding is built not solely on blood ties but on shared goodwill and responsibility. Every choice has its reasons: love, freedom, security, or tradition. And each form of family in the 21st century adds new colours to the marriage journey. As night deepens and city lights flicker beyond your window, relax among these varied notions of home, and remember that every path to connection is a way for people to share, care, and accompany one another. In the space of boundless homes, the open family emerges as a contemporary version of communal spirit, a place where each member can maintain their individual identity while sharing responsibilities and joys in daily life. They are no longer confined by the traditional notions of one husband, one wife, or parents, children, but are creating a pluralistic, cooperative model in which kinship and friendship intertwine. A group of 4 friends in Berlin, 2 couples and 2 singles, signed a family cooperation agreement at City Hall, with terms specifying shared rent, living expenses, and joint care of their cat, Luna. They hold a family dinner each week, taking turns to cook dishes from each member's culture. Monday pho from Vietnam, Wednesday Spanish tapas, Friday Japanese sushi, and American-style barbecue on the weekend. When one travels abroad on business, the others step in to help with housework, cat care, and scheduling the self-watering of the houseplants. In Melbourne, another family cooperation of 3 single women, a paediatrician, an architect, and a kindergarten teacher, decided they did not want to live alone. They jointly purchased a large apartment, designing each bedroom as a private sanctuary, with a workspace, a meditation corner, and personal bookshelves. The open-plan living room and kitchen serve as communal areas where they chat, read together, and host friends. Each month, one member takes on the role of host, doing a deep clean, arranging fresh flowers, and leading a skill-sharing workshop, pottery, meditation, or creative journaling. In Seoul, the multi-generational friend-family co-housing movement has flourished, especially among millennials and Gen Z. They rent and renovate an old house into an artistic hub, an art studio, a music practice room, and a small library. The minimalist bedrooms include integrated desks and bookshelves. The communal living area features an optimized kitchen, a large dining table, and a super cozy sofa for all 8 to gather. Though unrelated by blood, they celebrate Christmas, Lunar New Year, and ancestral memorials together, making rice cakes, wrapping gifts, and hanging lanterns to honour their shared cultural roots. In Sao Paulo, a group of 4, 2 same-sex couples and 2 bisexual friends, formed a family council to manage their joint finances and raise 3 adopted children. They signed a 100-page civil contract detailing visitation rights, shared education costs, medical care responsibilities, and decision-making authority during crises. Each parent has an equal voice, and important decisions are made by vote, ensuring a democratic spirit. Their wedding was not just a ceremony, but a legal and communal pledge to a pluralistic family, where love is not limited by gender or number of participants. In Nairobi, a new village-style cooperation model has emerged amid urbanization. 3 young families from different tribes, Kikuyu, Luo, and Maasai, jointly invested in building a small housing community on suburban land. Each family has its own self-contained flat, but they share a common dining hall, an organic vegetable garden, and a playground for the children. Everything is managed via a mobile app, scheduling kitchen use, assigning gardening duties, and registering for community events. Through this, the children of the 3 families learn each other's languages, cultures, and rituals, forging a strong bond for the next generation. Not only in cities, but also in rural Europe, family cooperation is reviving a slow life philosophy. 3 families from France, Germany, and the Netherlands purchased an old farm together, converting the cattle barn into an art studio, turning the meadow into an herb garden and a macrobiotic farm. They take turns tending the garden, share organic produce among the group, and host homestay guests. In autumn feasts, they dance under paper lanterns, share ancestral stories, and hold hands to affirm the balance between personal ownership and communal responsibility. More importantly, the open family model is not just about sharing material resources, but also provides emotional and spiritual support. When one member faces a psychological crisis, the whole group sits together to listen and offer help. taking turns to bring each other to yoga classes, recommending therapists, and writing shared reflection journals. When someone is overwhelmed by work, the others help look after the children, cook dinner, and care for the pets. In the urbanised world's inherent loneliness, this is the chosen family, where deep friendship forms the basis for lasting bonds. As with any marriage model, the open family faces challenges, protecting privacy while living together, resolving conflicts when personal interests collide, and maintaining clear boundaries between friend and family roles. To overcome these, many groups hold regular family conferences, setting common rules, reviewing their cooperation contract, and sharing both positive experiences and difficulties. It is precisely this transparency and mutual respect that help them keep the flame of connection alive over time. When the evening light fades, the open family scene is not only a mirror of modern marriage's transformation, but also a testament to humanity's longing to bond and share in ways that allow each individual to feel free, safe, and understood. In a constantly moving world, this may be one of the new forms writing the next chapter of humanity's homes. When dawn breaks over the mist-shrouded horizon, many still pause in silence to reflect on the true meaning of home. Though modern life seems to urge us into long-term commitments, countless souls choose to slow their pace, listen to themselves, and redefine family in their own way. Some couples, after cohabiting, testing every nook and cranny of everyday life, draft a loyalty pact, not just once but annually, recording expectations, dreams, and changes to share. They hold a small vow renewal ceremony, a romantic evening for two, where they read aloud their original promises and exchange new rings, affirming love nurtured over time. There are also relationships unbound by paperwork, but solidified through relationship anniversary days. They don't register legally, but always mark the date of their first meeting, first trip together, or first New Year's celebration as a couple. On those occasions, they exchange gifts of deep meaning, a book tied to their memory, a sketch capturing a key moment, or simply a home-cooked meal, reminding one another that the most precious thing is intimacy and shared time. Meanwhile, more people are choosing micro-weddings, with only 10-20 of their dearest guests. The ceremony takes place at a corner cafe, in a backyard garden, or on the beach at sunrise. Every detail, from invitations and decor to the wedding cake, is handcrafted by the couple or commissioned from local artisans. This not only minimises cost, but also fosters genuine connections with family and friends, avoiding elaborate rituals and social pressure. On the other hand, singles can opt for a self-commitment day, a ceremony for oneself in which they promise to continue valuing themselves, nurturing passions, and opening their hearts to friendship and love when it arrives. The intimate event happens in the living room, with a few candles, handwritten affirmations, and soft strains of a favourite song. Though each choice takes a different form, they all share a common purpose, celebrating individual agency and defining relationships, emotions, and responsibilities. Gone are rigid frameworks. Marriage and family become flexible journeys, evolving with circumstances, culture, and personal aspirations. When night falls, imagine the flickering candles in a small room, warm smiles beside cups of tea or glasses of wine, and whispered promises exchanged, whether with someone else or with oneself, whether in traditional or modern forms. Because ultimately, family is hearts beating in harmony, together keeping the flame of love and sharing alive amid life's constant changes. Amid a landscape of boundless homes, open families emerge as a contemporary echo of communal spirit. Places where each member maintains their individual identity while sharing responsibilities and joys in daily life. They are no longer confined by the traditional notions of one husband, one wife, or parents-children, but are creating a pluralistic cooperative model in which kinship and friendship intertwine. A group of 4 friends in Berlin, 2 couples and 2 singles, signed a family cooperation agreement at City Hall, with terms specifying shared rent, living expenses, and joint care of their cat, Luna. They hold a family dinner each week, taking turns to cook dishes from each member's culture. Monday is Vietnamese pho, Wednesday Spanish tapas, Friday Japanese sushi, and on the weekend, American-style barbecue. When one travels abroad on business, the others step in to help with housework, cat care, and scheduling the self-watering of the houseplants. In Melbourne, another family cooperation of 3 single women, a paediatrician, an architect, and a kindergarten teacher, decided they did not want to live alone. They jointly purchased a spacious apartment, designing each bedroom as a private sanctuary with a workspace, a meditation corner, and personal bookshelves. The open-plan living room and kitchen serve as communal areas where they chat, read together, and host friends. Each month, one member takes on the role of host, handling a deep clean, arranging fresh flowers, and organising a skills-sharing workshop, pottery, meditation, or creative journaling. In Seoul, the multi-generational friend-family co-housing movement has flourished, especially among millennials and Gen Z. They rent and renovate an old house into an artistic hub, an art studio, a music practice room, and a small library. The minimalist bedrooms include built-in desks and bookshelves. The communal living area features an optimised kitchen, a large dining table, and an ultra-comfortable sofa for all 8 to gather. Though unrelated by blood, they celebrate Christmas, Lunar New Year, and ancestral memorials together, making rice cakes, wrapping gifts, and hanging lanterns to honour their shared cultural roots. In Sao Paulo, a group of 4, 2 same-sex couples and 2 bisexual friends, formed a family council to manage their joint finances and raise 3 children from adoption programs. They signed a 100-page civil contract detailing visitation rights, shared education costs, medical care responsibilities, and decision-making authority in crises. Each parent has an equal voice, and major decisions are made by vote, ensuring a democratic spirit. Their wedding was not only a ceremony, but a legal and communal pledge to a pluralistic family, where love is not limited by gender or number of participants. In Nairobi, a new village-style cooperation model has emerged. Amid urbanisation, 3 young families from different tribes, Kikuyu, Luo, and Maasai, jointly invested in building a small housing community on suburban land. Each family has its own self-contained flat, but they share a common dining hall, an organic vegetable garden, and a playground for the children. Everything is managed via a mobile app, scheduling kitchen use, assigning gardening duties, and registering for community events. Through this, the children of the 3 families learn each other's languages, cultures, and rituals, forging a strong bond for the next generation. Not only in cities, but also in rural Europe, family cooperation is reviving a slow life philosophy. 3 families from France, Germany, and the Netherlands purchased an old farm together, converting the cattle barn into an art studio, turning the meadow into an herb garden and macrobiotic farm. They take turns tending the garden, share organic produce among the group, and host homestay guests. At autumn feasts, they dance under paper lanterns, share ancestral stories, and hold hands to affirm the balance between personal ownership and communal responsibility. More importantly, the open family model is not just about sharing material resources, but also provides emotional and spiritual support. When one member faces a psychological crisis, the whole group sits together to listen and offer help, taking turns to accompany each other to yoga classes, recommending therapists, and writing shared emotion journals. When someone is overwhelmed by work, the others help look after the children, cook dinner, and care for the pets. In the urbanised world's inherent loneliness, this is the chosen family, where deep friendship forms the basis for lasting bonds. As with any marriage model, the open family faces challenges, protecting privacy while living together, resolving conflicts when personal interests collide, and maintaining clear boundaries between friend and family roles. To overcome these, many groups hold regular family conferences, setting common rules, reviewing their cooperation contract, and sharing both positive experiences and difficulties. It is precisely this transparency and mutual respect that help them keep the flame of connection alive over time. When the evening light fades, the open family scene is not only a mirror of modern marriage's transformation, but also a testament to humanity's longing to bond and share in ways that allow each individual to feel free, safe, and understood. In a constantly moving world, this may be one of the new forms writing the next chapter of humanity's homes. When the smoke of battle momentarily clears in war-torn regions, and columns of relief ships have delivered food to civilians, the task of rebuilding goes beyond mending houses. It is about healing hearts that have borne loss. In this chapter, we follow families, communities, and charities as they weave life's fabric anew, where marriage is not only about two people but the solidarity of an entire community. In northwest Syria, after years of devastation, the makeshift tin roofs have been replaced with new tiles and wooden frames are taking shape. The Village of Peace project, initiated by an international relief organisation, has reconstructed living spaces for hundreds of families. Each household receives a small house with a shared courtyard where children play and women exchange family care tips. Particularly, they hold a tree of rebirth ceremony. Every newlywed or remarried couple is given an olive sapling to plant in their yard, symbolising enduring love and the hope for peace. In West Africa, at the Benin and Togo migrant camps, the community hall becomes the venue for free mass weddings. Under the eaves of wooden shelters, hundreds of couples in traditional attire, hand in hand, walk down aisles decorated with kente cloth and seashells. Ancient rites, dancing in circles and singing lullabies across the settlement, have been revived, allowing thousands of couples not only to receive marriage certificates, but also to reclaim faith in their cultural traditions. In Eastern Europe, youth organisations formed after the Soviet era, together with street night groups, have revived the fireworks wedding, a ritual in which bride and groom stand beneath arches of handcrafted pyrotechnics, heralding a radiant new beginning after long nights of hardship. In parks once filled with protest chants, now children's laughter and brass horn fanfares ring out, marking the return of family joy. In Central America, when tropical storms strike coastal regions, international volunteers and local communities organise a Love Aid camp. The camp is pitched under sturdy tents, divided into zones: couples counselling rooms, survival skills workshops, and a children's play area. Each evening, by lantern light, couples participate in the Promise After the Storm ceremony. They slip on rings carved from driftwood and recite vows of resilience and mutual care through the coming tempest. Across the Pacific Islands, after tsunamis, small island communities have adopted the communal house model, multiple families living together in a solid, elevated dwelling, sharing chores and responsibilities. Each family has its private quarters, while the kitchen, laundry area, and play yard are communal. They observe a monthly ceremony of lights of hope under the new moon, lighting hundreds of oil lamps on the beach, and young couples with their parents exchange shell-wreath garlands, reminding all that, though the ocean rages, kinship keeps them together. These recovery efforts do more than rebuild walls. They heal emotional wounds, restore relationships, and lay foundations for future generations. When you hear the wind rustle through newly planted olive trees, the beat of kente drums, and the drip of fireworks overhead against the night sky, remember the power of love and marriage. It is not merely the bond of two people, but the network of community rising together from the rubble to write the next chapter of life. Amid the remnants of crisis, as many families strive to reclaim a normal rhythm of life, there exist relationships at once fragile and fiercely strong, marked by physical disability, differing orientations, or single parents bearing double burdens, who stand as testaments to resilience and the will to overcome fate. In post-war or post-disaster rehabilitation centres, many disabled couples find one another amid their recovery journeys. A soldier who lost a leg in an accident, and a volunteer who who temporarily lost her sight, learned together to move on crutches and walkers, sharing each step of their gait training and each physical therapy exercise. Over time, these appointments in the therapy room become moments of affection, their eyes meeting in the mirror as their hearts ignite with the vow, "We will walk on together." Orphaned children also help form new families. At a recovery camp in Southwest Asia, a girl whose parents perished as refugees is adopted by a single teacher. The girl and her mother, both having endured loss, weave a steadfast mother-child bond. The mother teaches her to keep a journal, and the girl sings lullabies to her from a single sheet of music. When nightmares summon painful memories, they hold each other through the long night. Within the LGBT+ community, couples not only face shared crises, but also fight for recognition. In an Eastern European city, where same-sex marriage has recently been legalised, two men meet in a volunteer workshop supporting the homeless. When they decide to hold a re-entry ceremony after the economic crisis, a miniature wedding for those who share their struggles, they invite LGBT+ friends, sympathetic neighbours, and former fellow volunteers. There is no courthouse, only the old house they've repainted together, the place where they once shared meals and dreams of the future. For single parents, post-crisis pressures multiply as they must rebuild their homes while ensuring their children do not drop out of school or miss vaccinations. In a suburb of a Latin American city, a widow whose husband died of the pandemic forms a single parents association, where mothers take turns escorting children to school, cooking collective lunches, and sharing childcare duties. Each evening, they host an online storytelling club so the children can connect, ease loneliness, and rediscover the joy of childhood. Above all, these stories engrave a single truth. Marriage and family are not only about couples or blood ties, but about the choice to love and cling together in adversity. Amid devastation and loss, genuine affection finds a way to prevail. The limping soldier and volunteer share a smile in the mirror. The single teacher and orphaned girl clasp hands under yellow lamplight. LGBT+ couples and single parents form a circle of arms, stepping forward together. When the storm has passed, these families do more than rebuild their homes. They heal broken hearts. They weave a tapestry of hope from tattered threads, showing us that whenever hardship comes to an end, be it war, pandemic, or natural disaster, love and the determination to nurture family will always find a path to survival. Global marriage trends. Today, prosperity, crisis, and family planning policies. As we entered the 2020s, we witnessed a clear divergence in marriage and family patterns worldwide. In developed economies, traditional marriage rates are declining, while relationship quality, grounded in equality and clearly defined short-term commitments, is rising. Meanwhile, many developing countries face early marriage crises, high divorce rates, and family planning pressures. Northern Europe, a beacon of equality and welfare. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Finland lead the world in gender equality within marriage. Only about 40–50% of adults marry officially, yet cohabitation rates and shared parenting commitments are very high. Robust social welfare programs, from extended parental leave for both mothers and fathers to child allowances and free early childhood education, ensure couples need not fear the financial impact of having children. As a result, divorce rates hover at moderate levels, around 30–35%, and most separations are resolved through family counselling and equitable division of assets. Western Europe, late marriage, prevalent cohabitation. In Germany, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, the average age at marriage has climbed to 30–35 for both men and women. Nearly half of young families cohabit, and 50–60% of children are born to unmarried parents. Public health systems and no-fault divorce laws help limit protracted conflicts. Yet this also gives rise to a commitment gap. Many couples cohabit for only a few years, have one child, then separate, putting psychological strain on the offspring. North America, freedom paired with crisis. The United States and Canada still see 50-60% of adults marry officially, with an average marriage age of about 29-31. However, US divorce rates range from 40 to 45%, especially high among lower middle income groups. Canada's lower divorce rate, around 35%, reflects stronger mental health support policies and marriage mediation centres. At the same time, voluntary family planning is booming. Widespread contraceptive use, delaying childbirth until career stability, and expanded premarital counselling. Asia, diversity from early marriage crises to one-child pressures. Japan and South Korea, late marriage, men 31-33, women 29-31. And record low fertility rates, below 1.3 children per woman. Many young adults choose permanent singlehood due to economic and social pressures. Government incentives, parental leave expansions, child allowances have shown limited impact. China, the legacy of the one-child policy, 1979 to 2015, has produced population ageing and gender imbalances. Average marriage age has risen to about 30, and fertility has plunged to around 1.2 children per woman. Pro-natal measures, cash subsidies, tuition waivers, are underway but slow to yield results. India and Southeast Asia, early marriage under 18 remains common in rural areas, leading to school dropouts and maternal child health issues. India, Bangladesh, and Vietnam have raised the legal marriage age to 18 and launched no child marriage campaigns, universal education initiatives, and tax breaks for families with 2 children. Africa, population pressure, and early marriage crisis. Saharan and West African regions have the world's highest fertility rates, over 4 children per woman, alongside child marriage rates of 30-14 child. Marriage under 18. Multi-generation households and early unions stem from tradition and agrarian economies. International agencies, UNFPA, UNICEF, partner with local governments on community behaviour change campaigns, sex education programs and free contraception to curb child marriage and empower women's choices. Latin America, love and economic instability. Official marriage rates in Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico hover around 50-55%, with fertility near 1.7-2.0 children per woman. Economic crises and political volatility have driven up divorce rates, 35-40%. Spanish-speaking countries like Guatemala and Honduras maintain low child marriage rates, 10-15%, thanks to educational campaigns and economic support for poor families. Family planning is backed by public health networks and NGOs. Against this diverse backdrop, family planning policies play a pivotal role, from promoting fewer, later births in developed nations to reducing child marriage and supporting reproductive health in developing regions. Balancing individual autonomy with sustainable development goals will remain a pressing challenge for every country. Family planning strategies. When policy draws the future of marriage. On the long journey to balance population, social welfare, individual autonomy, many countries have crafted family planning programs with clear objectives, not only to lower or raise birth rates, but also to profoundly shape marriage and family models. Sweden and Norway. Freedom to reproduce, maximum support. In the Nordics, parental leave and child allowances are designed to encourage couples to have 2 or more children, while preserving choice. Parents receive a total of 480 days leave, of which 90 days are reserved for fathers, and benefits cover up to 80% of base salary. Public daycare accepts children from age 1 at minimal cost. As a result, Sweden maintains a fertility rate of 1.7 children per woman, significantly higher than the 1.4-1.5 average in Europe. while stable marriage and cohabitation rates remain steady. Japan, meagre subsidies, heavy pressure. By contrast, Japan's childbirth subsidy is only £15,000, £20,000, roughly D3 to 4 million per birth, plus a monthly allowance of only a few $100s. With housing and education costs beyond many young families' means, they increasingly delay marriage and childbearing. Average marriage age rises, single by choice becomes widespread, and recent efforts, like expanded premarital counselling or issuing birth vouchers for discounted insurance, have yet to push the fertility rate back toward replacement level. China, post one child, from restriction to encouragement. After 35 years of the one-child policy, China shifted to 2 children in 2015 and 3 children in 2021. The government offers £110,000, £20,000 RMB subsidies for second children, waives public elementary school tuition, and provides preferential mortgage loans. However, exam pressure, high urban housing costs, and social stigma still make many couples hesitant. Marriage age climbs, and divorce rates trend upward amid marital tensions. India, educating women, key to reducing child marriage. In India, the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Save the Daughter, Educate the Daughter program raises the minimum marriage age to 18, imposes heavy penalties on child marriage, and offers scholarships to rural schoolgirls. Coupled with free contraception at local health centres, child marriage has fallen from 47% in 2000 to 27% in 2020. As women gain education and join the workforce, they marry later, have fewer children, and enjoy more stable unions. Nigeria, partnering with religion and ethnicity. In Nigeria, family planning must navigate religious and tribal traditions. The government works with religious commissions to promote voluntary use of condoms, IUDs, and, to a lesser extent, sterilisation among Christian and Muslim communities. Through a network of community experts, tribal chiefs and religious leaders, a campaign encouraging couples to delay their first birth until after age 20 has lowered the fertility rate slightly from 5.5 to 5.0 children per woman between 2010 and 2020. Though far from replacement level, this start demonstrates the power of cultural religious alliances to shift early marriage practices. Latin America, the reproductive rights movement. In Uruguay, Argentina, and Costa Rica, the reproductive rights movement has enshrined family planning in their constitutions. Public health clinics distribute combined oral contraceptives free of charge, offer premarital counselling, and provide post-abortion psychological support. Fertility rates have fallen to 1.8 to 1.9 children per woman, and late marriage rates, 30 plus, have risen. Divorce rates remain stable at around 30%, thanks to robust legal and psychological support systems. Overall, family planning policies directly influence the age of marriage, fertility rates, and even the quality of marital relationships. Where support is comprehensive, couples confidently make long-term commitments. Where subsidies are limited, they hesitate to marry and start families. To balance economic social development with personal rights, each country must tailor its policies to fit its culture, religion, and standard of living. The socio-economic impact of late marriage and virtual marriage trends. In the coming years, 2 major currents, delayed marriage and technology-assisted union, will profoundly shape the landscape of families, labour markets, and social welfare systems. In many developed countries, the average age at marriage is projected to rise to 32 to 35 for women and 34 to 37 for men. As people invest more time in education and career building, they accumulate experience and savings, but postpone family formation. The consequences include a more flexible labour market. Single individuals pay higher per-person rents, are more willing to relocate for work, freelance, or accept short-term contracts. This increases labour allocation efficiency but also puts pressure on social housing stocks, pressure on social welfare systems. Later marriages mean later childbearing and faster population ageing. Pension and healthcare systems bear a heavier load, caring for the elderly while the young workforce shrinks. Many governments must adjust pension formulas and raise retirement ages to 67 to keep funds solvent. Changed consumption patterns. Long-term singles tend to spend heavily on travel, entertainment, and technology. The wedding planner industry shrinks, replaced by micro-elopement services, minimally attended weddings, and solo relocation packages, offering help with moving, interior design, and organising personal commitment ceremonies. Simultaneously, virtual marriage. Including avatar marriages in the metaverse, electronic marriage registration, and digitised weddings, will expand rapidly. New legal infrastructure. Some states begin to recognise the legal value of digital signatures and blockchain marriage contracts. Virtual marriage certificates could serve for birth registration, spousal visas, or joint tax filings. However, legislation must address forgery risks and protect personal data privacy. Digital wedding service market. Startups offer platforms for virtual ceremonies, allowing guests to attend via VR, send virtual gifts, NFT bouquets, and share a global meal delivery feast. Post-event services include digital keepsake storage, avatar replay videos, and emotion stamps that analyse guests' facial expressions. Psychological and community effects. Virtual marriage opens doors for people with disabilities, expatriates, or those valuing privacy, but can also erode the sense of authentic connection. Psychologists warn that without physical interaction and body language, relationships risk feeling artificial, and virtual divorces, online annulments may rise. Over the next decade, these trends will intersect. Late marrying couples may first experience virtual marriage before deciding on a real ceremony. Relationship tech firms will offer pre-marital VR retreats, letting them test daily shared life in simulation, from joint bank accounts to synchronized wake-up times. Social policies are adapting too. Some European nations plan to introduce a universal basic income for singles aged 25 to 35 to support independent living and voluntarily encourage earlier parenthood. Smart cities will build modular apartments, accommodating both traditional families and virtual marrying couples, adding home office zones, VR studios, and multi-purpose meeting rooms. Ultimately, whatever trend dominates, the decisive factor remains humanity's need for genuine connection, shared responsibility, and nurturing the next generation. Late marriage allows individuals to develop themselves before binding their lives. Virtual marriage unlocks creative new family forms. As these two currents converge, they will map out a multi-layered future of marriage, where everyone can honour tradition and harness technology to build their own home. Amid the remnants of crisis, when many families are still striving to regain a normal rhythm, there exist relationships both fragile and fiercely resilient. Those marked by physical disability, differing orientations, or single parents bearing double burdens. They stand as living proof of indomitable spirit and the will to transcend fate. In post-war and post-disaster rehabilitation centres, many disabled couples find one another along the path to recovery. A soldier who lost a leg in an accident and a volunteer who suffered temporary blindness learn side by side to move with crutches and walkers, sharing each step of gait training and every physical therapy exercise. Over time, these therapy room appointments become moments of tenderness, as their eyes meet in the mirror and their hearts ignite with the vow, "We will keep walking together." Orphaned children also help forge new families. At a recovery camp in Southwest Asia, a little girl whose parents were killed as refugees is adopted by a single teacher. Both having endured the pain of loss, the girl, and her mother weave a steadfast mother-child bond. The teacher guides her in writing a journal, and the girl lulls her with a lone lullaby. When nightmares resurface, they hold each other through the long night. Within the LGBT+ community, couples not only survive shared crises but also fight for recognition. In an Eastern European city, where same-sex marriage has only recently been legalised, two men meet in a volunteer workshop supporting the homeless. When they decide to hold a re-entry ceremony after the economic crisis, a miniature wedding for those who share their hardships, they invite LGBT+ friends, sympathetic neighbours, and former volunteer colleagues. There is no courthouse involved, only the old house they have repainted together, the place where they once shared meals and dreams of the future. For single parents, post-crisis pressures multiply as they must rebuild their homes while ensuring their children do not drop out of school or miss vital vaccinations. In a suburb of a Latin American city, a widowed mother whose spouse died of the pandemic forms a single parents association, where mothers take turns escorting children to school, cooking communal lunches, and sharing childcare duties. Each evening they host an online storytelling club, so the children can connect, alleviate loneliness, and rediscover the joys of childhood. Above all, these stories engrave one profound truth. Marriage and family are not solely about two individuals or blood ties, but about the choice to love and cling together through adversity. Amid devastation and loss, genuine affection finds a way to prevail. The limping soldier and the volunteer share a smile in the mirror. The single teacher and the orphaned girl clasp hands under soft lamplight. LGBT+ couples and single parents form a wider circle, stepping forward together. When the storm has passed, these families do more than rebuild their homes. They heal the shattered pieces of their hearts. They weave a tapestry of hope from tattered threads, showing us that whenever hardship subsides, be it war, pandemic, or natural disaster, love and the determination to nurture family will always find a path to survival. As humanity's steps toward routinely setting foot on the moon became reality, a grand question arose. How will we give birth to and raise a new generation in space? This chapter tells the story of the first children born and raised not on Earth, but inside orbital modules, a trial run for humanity's future expansion beyond its mother planet. At Mars Base 1, the Space Hospital Little Pioneer features stable pressure chambers, specialised radiation filtration systems, and nurse robots assisting in birth surgery. Baby Alia, the daughter of a married engineer couple, was delivered after 38 weeks in a softly oxygenated incubator. Her first cry rang out through the onboard microphones and streamed live, back to Earth to overwhelming emotion. Doctors and engineers alike rejoiced, a drop of bright red blood officially recorded against the deep red of Mars. At the Polaris outpost, an orbital research module circling the moon, baby Soren was born into a microgravity nursery. Doctors adjust the buoyant pressure and replicate Earth's light-dark cycle so his circadian rhythm develops normally. Cradles suspended from elastic cables keep him from drifting, while LED lights simulate dawn and dusk to cue melatonin production, ensuring restful sleep. From week 1, parents and specialists launch the Spaceborn learning program, teaching the child to recognise faces on a 3D display, reading Earth's fairy tales scored by AI-composed lullabies, and practicing crawling on soft, EVA-padded flooring. Each tiny movement sensed by robots to automatically tune the flooring's elasticity to his growing body. An astro-nutrition feeding system is also in place. Early meals, from protein-rich microalgae formula to synthesized oat porridge, are precisely balanced for salt, minerals, and vitamin D to compensate for cosmic radiation exposure. Alia often sucks on a gently warming silicone teat, giving her the sensation of nursing on Earth, while Soren uses a sensor-fitted bottle that monitors his heart rate, respiratory status, and digestive comfort. Despite the advanced technology, the greatest challenges remain social and emotional. To prevent loneliness, the midwife team, composed of companion robots and Earth-based caregivers, holds daily VR lullaby sessions. Alia can embrace her avatar grandmother in Stockholm, while Soren listens to AI-accompanied Dan Tran melodies and Bac Ninh folk songs to connect with his mother's Vietnamese heritage. The parents have also founded a Space Parents Club, linking them via 360-degree video calls to families on Earth to share childcare experiences, from treating microgravity-induced seizures to bathing techniques using sterile water bags and wipes. Every milestone, from the first smile to the first weightless steps, is recorded and analysed by an AI psychologist to detect early signs of developmental stress and intervene as needed. As the children grow, the space school curriculum begins. Quantum mathematics, spaceflight history, and even Earth civilization courses, interactive about Vietnamese, Swedish, or Nigerian culture. They join hydroponic farming projects, planting leafy greens and tomatoes by hand in module planters, learning biology while contributing fresh food to the community. These first spaceborn children are not only evidence of humanity's survival beyond Earth, but also hope for a multi-planet future. As modules extend from low orbit to lunar bases and Martian outposts, we will continue refining birth techniques, child-rearing practices, and generational bonds, raising the inaugural cosmic citizens who will chart humanity's path farther than ever before. Lessons from the space generation and a vision for the Interplanetary University. Looking back on the first chapter of Spaceborn Children, we can identify several key lessons. Biology is adaptable, but requires fine-tuning. Children in microgravity and exposed to cosmic radiation experience changes in bone density, sleep patterns, and immune function. Carefully calibrated physical therapy regimens, tuning elastic resistance, LED lights that recreate day-night cycles, and astronutrition micronutrient supplements are all vital for survival. Emotional connection is more critical than ever. Even with VR, companion robots, and AI midwives, virtual hugs or remote lullabies cannot fully replace real touch. A hybrid model, robots providing constant support with parents on Earth rotating through occasional in-person visits, has proven most effective in maintaining emotional bonds. Multicultural education must span space. Space children must learn quantum math and spaceflight history, but also retain their parents' cultural roots. Integrating folk music, native languages, and traditional festivals into the space school curriculum helps them build a strong identity, laying the foundation for proud, interplanetary citizens. Space parent communities are survival networks. 360 degrees chat groups, online workshops, and global shared experience libraries enable parents to stay current on childcare techniques, emergency protocols, and morale-boosting strategies. No one is alone in the vast void. Looking ahead, the emerging Interplanetary University. Academic infrastructure, campuses in rotating lunar modules, and Mars base. 2 will feature radiation-shielded lecture halls, AI-integrated digital libraries, and Mars surface simulation fields for hands-on training. Interdisciplinary programs. In addition to space AI, astrobiological engineering, and interplanetary economics, students will study Earth-galaxy cultures, space law, and interplanetary relations. Earth-space links. Thanks to high-bandwidth streaming, professors from Harvard, ETH Zurich, and the University of Tokyo can lecture live to zero-gravity students, while those students contribute real-time field research from the Moon or Mars. A connected student body. Interplanetary students form the Alpha Galactic Club to share cultures, host multi-planet festivals, and develop startups like Moon Farm or Martech, self-sustaining habitat technology for small space stations. When the first interplanetary diplomas are awarded, they will mark a new chapter. Humanity not only building families among the stars, but laying the groundwork for knowledge, culture, and science to flourish in parallel across multiple worlds. This is the legacy of the space generation, our first cosmic citizens, and humanity's grand aspiration to expand our homes, our schools, and our hearts to every corner of the boundless universe.